You said something earlier today. Maybe it was fine. Maybe it was perfectly normal. Maybe nobody even blinked. But now, hours later, you are lying in bed or sitting in traffic or staring at a wall, and the conversation is playing again. Not just the words, the tone, the pause, the way their eyes moved when you said that one thing. You are editing your lines, rewriting the scene, running it back from a different angle, wondering if the version you delivered was the right one. And a small voice in the back of your mind keeps asking, did they notice? Did I say too much? Did I say too little? Did they leave that conversation thinking something about me that is not true? If that sounds like your life, you are not broken, you are not anxious, and you are not wasting time. You are doing something that most people's brains are simply not built to do. And today, I want to show you why. Because if you replay conversations in your head, you likely carry 6 rare psychological traits that most people will never understand. But before we get into them, I want you to consider something. What if the loop in your head, the one that replays every word and every silence, is not a trap? What if it is a signal? What if your brain is not stuck in the past but searching for meaning in a world that moves too fast for most people to notice? Because the truth is, people who replay conversations are not overthinking. They are processing at a level that goes far deeper than the surface. And it starts with something psychologists call high-trait introspection, a pattern of deep, habitual self-reflection that is linked to one of the most fascinating networks in the human brain, the default mode network. The default mode network, or the DMN, is a system of interconnected brain regions that lights up when you are not focused on the outside world. When your body is at rest, but your mind is still churning, that is the DMN at work. It activates during self-reflection, during memory retrieval, during those moments when your thoughts drift inward without permission. It is the brainstorm of connections, weaving meaning from silence, building a sense of who you are from every experience you have ever had. Neurologist Marcus Rachel first described the network at the turn of the century, and since then it has become one of the most studied systems in all of neuroscience. It is active when you think about yourself. It is active when you think about other people. It is active when you remember the past and when you imagine the future. It even plays a role in dreaming. And here is what matters. The DMN is not a flaw. It is the engine behind creativity, empathy, and the construction of your personal identity. Research published in journals like Molecular Psychiatry has shown a direct causal link between DMN activity and creative thinking. When researchers disrupted the DMN during brain surgery, the patients became measurably less original in their responses. The same network that keeps you replaying a conversation at midnight is the same network that gives you the ability to imagine, to connect ideas across time, and to understand what other people are feeling without them saying a word. When you replay a conversation, your DMN is not spinning in circles. It is doing exactly what it was designed to do, searching for patterns, testing interpretations, and building a deeper understanding of the social world you live in. And that brings us to the first of your 6 rare traits. You do not just replay what happened, you replay why it happened. And then you ask yourself why you care. This is called metacognitive mastery, and it is far more unusual than you might think. Most people experience a conversation and move on. Something is said, a feeling arrives, the moment passes. But you add layers. After the conversation ends, you zoom out. You watch yourself think. You ask, why did that bother me? Why did I hesitate before I answered? What does it mean that I felt a flash of anger when they said that? You are not just processing the conversation. You are processing your own processing. Metacognition, the act of thinking about your own thinking, is a hallmark of high cognitive functioning. It requires the ability to step outside your own experience and observe it from above, as if you are both the actor and the audience at the same time. And while everyone has some capacity for this, people who habitually replay conversations tend to operate at a level of metacognitive depth that most people never reach. They do not just ask what happened. They ask what it means, what it reveals about themselves, and what they might do differently next time. This is not rumination, even though it can feel like it. Psychologists draw a clear line between the two. Rumination is passive and self-critical. It loops without progress. Metacognitive reflection is curious and purposeful. It asks, what can I learn from this? And research shows that this distinction matters at the level of the brain itself. Rumination keeps the alarm systems of the brain activated. Reflection engages the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for executive function, problem solving, and insight. The same habit that keeps you up at night is, when used well, one of the most powerful tools for self-understanding that exists. Now let us move to the second trait. And this one explains why a single glance can keep you thinking for hours. You are hypersensitive to nuance, not because you are insecure, but because you see layers that most people walk right past. When someone says, I am fine, most people hear the words and accept them. You hear the words and immediately begin scanning for contradictions. You notice the slight drop in their voice. You notice the way their eyes move to the left. You notice that they said, I am fine, instead of, I am good. And you know those are different. A single sentence becomes a paragraph of information. A single glance becomes an entire story. This kind of sensitivity has a biological basis. Psychologist Elaine Aron identified what she called sensory processing sensitivity, a temperament trait found in roughly 15 to 20% of the population. People with this trait have nervous systems that process sensory and emotional information more deeply than average. Brain imaging studies have confirmed that these individuals show stronger activation in brain regions associated with awareness, empathy, and what researchers call self-other processing. They do not just register stimuli, they absorb it, they feel it, and they turn it over until they understand it. Consider a case profile of how this plays out. Picture someone sitting across from a friend at dinner. The friend laughs at a joke, but the laugh comes half a second late. Most people would not notice, but the person with this trait catches it instantly, and now they are wondering, is something wrong? Did I say something that landed badly? Are they distracted by something they do not want to talk about? This is not paranoia. This is pattern recognition operating through a nervous system that is tuned to pick up signals that most people miss entirely. The gift is real. You read rooms with stunning accuracy, but the cost is also real because you cannot turn it off. Every room you enter, every conversation you have, you are absorbing everything. And sometimes that is exhausting. Now let us talk about the third trait. And this one separates the overthinkers from the deep thinkers. You do not just worry about your life. You question reality itself. This is what I call existential awareness, and it goes far beyond ordinary stress. Most people worry about deadlines, bills, and what to have for dinner. You worry about those things too, but underneath it all, your mind is always reaching for something bigger. You ask questions like, why do people say things they do not mean? What is the point of connection if we are all going to lose each other eventually? Is the version of me that people see in conversation actually who I am? Or is it a performance I have been rehearsing my whole life? These are not anxious thoughts. These are philosophical ones, and they show up consistently in people who replay conversations because the conversation itself is never really about the surface topic. It is about meaning. It is about what the exchange reveals about the nature of relationships, of honesty, of what it means to be understood by another person. You are not replaying what was said. You are replaying what it meant. And the meaning keeps unfolding the longer you sit with it, like a book that reveals a new layer every time you read the same page. Albert Einstein described himself as simply passionately curious. Carl Jung spent his career mapping the hidden layers of the human psyche, the shadow self, the archetypes, the collective unconscious. These were people who could not stop there, minds from digging beneath the obvious. And if your brain pulls you toward those kinds of questions, if you find yourself thinking about the architecture of a conversation long after it is over, you are not overthinking. You are mapping the geography of the mind. And very few people have the depth or the patience to do that. Now here is the fourth trait, and I think this one might be the most personal of all. You replay conversations because you are deeply invested in doing right by people, even when they do not notice. I call this high ethical empathy, and it is one of the most misunderstood traits a person can carry. When you replay a conversation, you are often not looking for what they did wrong. You are looking for what you might have done wrong. Did I listen carefully enough? Did I respond with the kindness they deserved? Was there a moment where I could have been more honest, more patient, more present? This is not guilt. Guilt looks backward with regret. Ethical empathy looks backward with care. It is the part of you that believes every interaction matters, that even a small careless word can leave a mark on someone's day. And because you believe that, you hold yourself to a standard that most people never even consider. You feel the weight of your own words more than others feel theirs. A small betrayal, a broken promise, a moment of thoughtlessness, these things feel cosmic to you because you understand what they cost. You understand that trust is built in tiny moments, and it can be damaged in tiny moments too. And so you replay the conversation not to torture yourself, but to make sure you honored the person on the other side of it. And the world does not always reward this. People will tell you that you are too sensitive, that you care too much, that you need to let things go. But the truth is, the world needs people who take their interactions seriously. It needs people who would rather lose sleep over whether they were kind enough than never think about it at all. Your ethical empathy is not a burden. It is a compass, and it points toward a kind of integrity that the fast, careless world desperately needs more of. Now let us talk about the fifth trait. And this one might explain why people sometimes feel like they cannot get close to you. You are selectively vulnerable, not because you are afraid of connection, but because your inner life is so rich that you refuse to share it with just anyone. Consider a narrative illustration of this. You are at a gathering. People are talking, laughing, sharing surface-level stories about their week. And you are there, present, smiling, saying the right things. But inside, there is a whole world they do not see. Thoughts you are processing, feelings you are holding, questions you are turning over. And you do not bring any of it to the surface because you know, from experience, that most people would not know what to do with it. This is selective vulnerability, and it is one of the defining features of people who replay conversations. You do not do halfway hearts. You do not share your depth with people who have not earned it, because you know what it feels like to open up and be met with a blank stare, or worse, with advice that completely misses the point. You have learned, probably the hard way, that not everyone has the capacity to hold the kind of honesty you carry. So you wait, you observe, you test the water. And only when you sense real depth in another person, when you feel that they have the capacity to hold what you are about to share, do you let them in. This is not coldness. This is wisdom. It is the recognition that your inner world is valuable and that sharing it with the wrong person can actually be harmful to you. Not because they are bad people, but because depth requires a container, and not everyone has one. This makes your relationships fewer but deeper. The people who do get access to your inner world often describe the experience as intense, almost overwhelming in its honesty and richness. And the people who never get past the surface might assume you are distant or guarded. But you are not guarded because you are afraid. You are guarded because you know the value of what you carry inside, and you will not hand it over to someone who will treat it carelessly. And finally, the sixth trait, the one that ties everything together. You have the ability to turn chaos into clarity, and it is a paradox that only a mind like yours can hold. I call this cognitive complexity, and it is the rarest trait on this list. Most people simplify the world to survive it. They reduce conversations to their most obvious meaning, flatten emotions into single words, and move on without looking back. But you cannot do that. Your brain refuses to simplify. It sees the roots beneath the tree, the light filtering through the branches, the soil that holds it all together. A single conversation is never just a conversation. It is a system of intentions, emotions, histories, and unspoken rules, and your mind wants to understand every single layer. This can feel like chaos when you are in the middle of it, when the thoughts are piling up and the interpretations are multiplying and you cannot find a clean, simple answer. It feels like your mind is working against you. But here is the truth. That chaos is the raw material of insight. Every great idea, every breakthrough in understanding, every moment of real clarity in human history has come from someone who was willing to sit with the mess long enough for the pattern to emerge. You are not stuck in the chaos. You are processing through it. And when the clarity finally arrives, when the pieces click into place and you suddenly understand what that conversation was really about, the understanding you reach is deeper and more complete than anything a simple mind could produce. That moment of clarity, when it comes, is not just satisfying. It is transformative. It changes how you see the person, the relationship, and sometimes even yourself. That is your gift, not the clarity itself, but the willingness to wade through the confusion to find it. Most people will never sit with the discomfort long enough. You will, and that is what makes the difference. But I want to be honest with you about something. Because carrying all of this, the metacognition, the sensitivity, the existential awareness, the empathy, the guarded heart, the complex mind, it is heavy. There are nights when you wish you could just let a conversation go, just hear what was said, accept it at face value, and move on with your evening. There are moments when you wish you could hear "I am fine" and believe it without scanning for subtext. There are times when the weight of your own depth feels less like a gift and more like a sentence, like you have been given a mind that sees too much in a world that was not built for that level of attention. You watch other people move through social situations with an ease that seems almost impossible to you. They say goodbye, and they are done. The conversation ends and it stays ended. But for you, the conversation follows you home. It sits with you at dinner. It climbs into bed with you. And sometimes you wonder if there is something fundamentally different about you, if the way you process the world is a strength or a sickness, And in those moments, the world's advice is always the same. Just stop overthinking. Just let it go. As if you could flip a switch and silence the most active, most sensitive, most brilliant part of who you are. As if the depth that makes you extraordinary is something you should apologize for. But here is what I believe, and I believe it deeply. Your mind is not the problem. The world just has not caught up to the way you think, and that is okay, because it might never catch up. What you have been calling overthinking is what the greatest minds in history called reflection. What you have been calling too much is what artists, philosophers, poets, and healers have always called depth. You are not replaying conversations because something is wrong with you or because you are weak. You are replaying them because you care about what things mean, because words matter to you, and that is one of the most human, most beautiful, most necessary things a person can do. So here is what I want to leave you with tonight. The next time you catch yourself in the replay, do not fight it. Do not shame yourself for it. Sit with it for a moment. Ask yourself what your mind is actually searching for. Is it clarity? Is it connection? Is it reassurance that you showed up the way you wanted to? Whatever it is, honor it, because your depth is not a flaw. It is a light. And in a world that moves too fast and feels too shallow, that light matters more than you know. Thank you for spending this time with me. I would love to hear from you. Which of these 6 traits did you feel the most? Drop it in the comments and let me know where you are listening from tonight. And if this is the kind of quiet, honest conversation that feeds your soul, subscribe and stay close. We have so much more left to explore together, and I am glad you are here.